Hi, everybody, and welcome back to my Zero Carb Life. I have back on the show today Dr. Philip Ovadia. I'm so grateful to see him again. Dr. Ovadia, as a carnivore, I know that we all completely get it now. We see it. The whole world now understands meat is healthy. And the real problem, of course, is sugar and carbs because it elevates our insulin and causes heart trouble. And aren't we just glad that everyone gets that now?
It's a beautiful world, and I'm out of work as a cardiac surgeon. So
Yeah, exactly. So it feels like sometimes in the carnivore space, like, wow, everybody knows that. It's not the meat. But then we step out the door, right? And we meet another human who's not in the carnivore space. And yeah, I don't think people get it yet.
no, I mean, I obviously continue to work as a heart surgeon. I'm very much in the, like you said, the real world, we'll call it,
Yeah.
and in the medical system. And I see the messaging and I see what patients get told and what they understand. And it's obviously I'm a very controversial figure, and I still get a lot of those, attacks by other doctors and by cardiologists who think what I talk about and what I say is dangerous. And when I tell patients that they can eat red meat, usually they say, but all my other doctors have told me that I need to stay away from red meat. And I try and take them through the process. I try and educate them to understand that it's not the red meat. It never was the red meat. And that red meat is our ancestrally consistent diet. It is the most nutrient dense food that we can eat. And it never has been the problem when it comes to heart disease, cancer, or any of these other things that we worry about.
It like almost makes me want to tear up to hear a doctor say that because I think for so many people watching, it's going to be the most refreshing thing ever to hear from a doctor those words. In fact, my first question I was going to ask is if you could get all of humanity to understand something about heart health, what would it be? And I would say like that, right? The meat isn't the problem. Is that one of the top things you wish everybody understood?
Yeah, it really is, because what has come from the perception that meat is the problem, really is the problem. And this messaging, this drive towards getting people to eat less meat and therefore more processed food is really what got us in the mess that we're in today. And I think the foundation of this is really that understanding of it's not the red meat. We can eat the whole real foods that are all around us. And that includes, things from the animal world and, things from the plant world, with a lot of cautions around the things from the plant world. The way that the conversation for me usually goes is, the patient has heard their entire life, you need to be on a low fat diet, you need to be eliminating red meat. And so they've been eating all of the processed food, all of the carbohydrates, all of the wheat products. And when I say to them now, I try to get them to understand that it's that stuff, it's the sugar, it's the highly processed carbohydrates that are really what led to you getting heart disease. And then they're kind of like, well, what can I eat? And so, I need to help them to understand that red meat is fine and you can eat all the meat you want. And quite frankly, most of them say, oh, thank you, thank God, that's what I want to eat. That's kind of what they know intuitively.
Yeah.
And they've struggled for so long against the advice telling them not to listen to their bodies.
Yeah. I've had a doctor tell me I should not touch red meat more than twice a week. This is as I was already carnivore several years, but he didn't know that. My great doctor had retired, so I went to a new guy just trying to find somebody who I could be agreeable with. It wasn't him.
Yeah, well, and twice a week is more generous than most. So,
Yeah. I said, well, that's what I'm doing twice every day. And he said, quote, we all know that can't be healthy. Well,
Well, and what we're kind of here to talk about today is some of the evidence that you have that it is healthy and it is doing wonderfully for you and your body. And again, you are one of the many examples that we have now showing us all of the benefits that you can get when you eat red meat in plentiful amounts.
yeah. So that's basically, thank you. That is pretty much what I eat all day, every day. Red meat. I do have some chicken. I had some salmon. I had a plank of salmon tonight with 3 burger patties. So I'll sometimes have fish with my red meat. Eggs, great. Little dairy, no problem. But the bulk of most carnivores' diet, mine as well, is beef. We eat beef. So if there's any validity to what people say about red meat is terrible for your heart, that's the majority of what I have eaten for 19 years. I've been a total carnivore. It'll be 15 years this fall. I mean, I should be just a train wreck in here by now, right? If they were correct about this. So I'm going to tell people a little story that you kind of know, Dr. Ovadia. I recently went to something called Lifeline testing. And I'll tell you that there were 4 tests they did on me. It was abdominal aortic aneurysm screening, atrial fibrillation, carotid artery disease screening, and peripheral arterial disease screening. Those are the 4 tests. For people who aren't familiar, it's a mobile thing. They go from like school gymnasiums to church fellowship halls, and they set up and they run these tests. And I thought, well, cool. This is something that maybe my group members could get done. And they could find out, if they're at risk. And in addition to those tests, I wanted an updated CAC score. So you were very generous and called that in, and you have the results of that. And then I got the Lifeline screening back. And that's when I messaged you in panic mode, because all of the tests came back perfect except for one. And it was my right carotid artery showed, quote, a moderate amount of plaque buildup. And everything else was perfect. And you remember recently I sent you this message. I'm
Yeah.
sure you could read into the tone of this was all but, excuse me, sir, but I need a refund on this carnivore thing. Why do I have plaque buildup? I said I'm not even having a lick, taste, or bite of sugar and carbs. So, for everybody watching, Dr. Ovadia said, look, before you get too concerned, let's get a real test at a real hospital done. I'll call it in. So, what are your thoughts, first of all, or experience with the Lifeline testing?
One of the things that people need to understand about getting ultrasound tests done is it can be very much influenced by who's doing the test. It's what we call a user an operator dependent test,
Okay.
meaning that, you really got to have a good operator that knows what they're looking at, the proper angles and ways to be looking at these blood vessels. And, quite frankly, with any test, there can be variability just based on the testing itself. So, for instance, if I had 2 people come and do your ultrasound of, in this case, we're talking about the carotid arteries at the same time, or one right after each other, right? So we know things aren't actually changing in your body that quickly when it comes to this. They can get 2 different results. And, I'm always suspicious when a case like yours, where we have other testing that shows no disease, but then they're saying that there's some disease in this blood vessel, and none of your other blood vessels show any evidence of disease. So, in this case, we chose to have the test repeated at a different location. And, the results came back very different, actually. They really showed that you had no significant plaque, was the exact wording on both sides. And then, looking into more detail at some of the velocities, how fast the blood is moving through those arteries, again, we showed no evidence of disease. for a number of reasons, I would put more trust in this piece of data than the piece of data you got from the other testing. And it goes along with your other testing, because the other test that we had run, like you mentioned, was a coronary artery calcium scan. And that shows a score of zero calcified plaque in your arteries. And this is in line with your previous scan. And I'm forgetting how long ago that was, but I think it was a number of years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago, that you also had a zero score. So here you are, like you said, 15 years into a strict carnivore diet, 19 years, we'll call it, into a meat-heavy diet, and you're showing no evidence of plaque in your arteries. And if, meat was really driving things, we would expect to see some effects. Now, you're one person, and if me being a skeptical person could say, well, maybe Kelly is too young to show plaque, and maybe it's going to come in the future. And the honest answer is, yeah, we don't know that until Kelly is 10 years older, 15 years older, 20 years older. But for right now, you're showing no evidence of disease. I know many other longtime carnivores who are older than you, who also are showing similar results. Yeah. And I think this is part of the gathering evidence that we are seeing, showing that in people that are only eating meat, it doesn't seem to have the same effects that are attributed to meat as part of a mixed diet, we'll call it, a standard American diet. And that would seem to implicate that it's not the meat in the standard American diet that is causing the problems. It must be something else.
Yeah. When I went for this follow-up scan, the ultrasound tech at the hospital, not on this mobile unit in a school gymnasium, but at the hospital, she said, "What brings you here today?" And I told her that I had gotten this lifeline testing done, and that one artery apparently had some plaque in it and everything else was perfect. She said, "I'll tell you what, I am going to do the most thorough exam I've ever done. And if it's in there, I'm going to find it. Deal?" Okay, deal. And so, I laid there quite a while. She said, "Ma'am, I am hunting. I am looking. I am photographing. I am looking at everything. And I can't give you official results," because she said, "I'm not your doctor. But I'm here to tell you, in the textbook of what arteries should look like, it's these arteries. There's nothing here." She said, "They look really good." Hey, I'm going to interrupt my own video for just a moment. I don't put ads during my videos, but I do want to take a moment to tell you about my coaching groups. I would love to work with you and help you. It's not just community support, but it is community support. We share breakthroughs and struggles, troubleshooting. Every session, you have the opportunity for a Q&A to talk. There are 8 separate groups, and the groups are kept to a size where I can communicate with you and talk to you. I always allow people to raise their hand if they have things they want to discuss. You have access to me as well, and a couple other things. One of them is the password protected TDEE, which is my Zero Carb Life exclusive, where you enter, takes about 30 seconds to enter your information, and it gives you the amount of calories that are recommended for your age, size, and activity level, along with all of that advice regarding protein and fat. Then you also get access for the month of coaching to a 127-page carnivore guide. Chapter 1 on getting started. There's an ordering guide for going out, lab work guides, recipes, how to do lymphatic massage, muscle testing, castor oil. Chapter 2 is all about addiction and struggles, which we talk about all of this in class as well. Chapter 3, the details on how to reduce body fat. There are tools in here like the burger patty math and how to set up Carb Manager, how to get your 30 grams of protein per meal minimum. There's a chapter on mental health, sleep, digestion, CIRS, maintenance mode once you get there, emotional eating, some inspirational stories from group members. And this is yours for the month of coaching. In addition to that, I post in our private Facebook groups for members only every single day, and you have the chance to interact with one another every day, as well as myself. Okay, I'm going to get back to Dr. Ovadia, but I would love to see you there. Thanks.
We have to acknowledge that diet is a large part of this, but outside of the diet, there are other factors that can be contributing to plaque formation. And we also, and this is one of the real important things that I work with the patients in my practice to understand and to look at is, plaque is a dynamic process. And what oftentimes occurs is someone has recently started the carnivore diet, the keto diet, whatever it is. And, as part of their sort of discovery process around their health, they hear about coronary artery calcium scans for like the first time. And so they go and they get their first scan, and lo and behold, the score isn't zero. There's plaque there. And now everyone's like in a panic. Okay, what do we do? And, I want people to understand that we now need to kind of follow that process over time. So if your score isn't zero, that doesn't mean that you can't do a carnivore diet. You shouldn't be doing a carnivore diet. What I want to do with patients like that is see what happens to their score over time. And I also want to be making sure that we're looking at all of the appropriate factors. So all of the things that can cause inflammation, making sure that you're not insulin resistant, because carnivore diets don't magically fix insulin resistance from day one. If you've been insulin resistant for 10, 15, 20 years, it's going to take some time to undo that. And in some cases, we can't even completely undo that. And same thing, if you've had all this inflammation coming from something else, maybe it's something else environmental, maybe it's, something that's still in your diet if you're, not on a pure carnivore diet. And so this is where working with a good practitioner who really understands this is so important. And it's, again, what I oftentimes see happen in the medical system is these people go to see the cardiologist, and the cardiologist just knee-jerk reaction is, oh, it's got to be that red meat. We got to get rid of that. And, and let's put you on the statin and lower your cholesterol. And they're not really thinking about the overall picture. And so that's why, I advocate so strongly for getting a practitioner who can do the deep dive with you, does understand all of these factors that go into this. The mainstream messaging around this is it's a very simple problem. Just lower your cholesterol and it's going to go away, right? That's what, basically the majority of the messaging around heart disease is. And over and over and over again, I see the failures of that approach. Those are all the people who end up on my operating table after a decade or more of being on statins, having very low cholesterol, eating the low-fat diet, and yet they still end up with the heart disease.
So right now, the last time I had it checked, which is just in the past months, not long ago, my HDL, what many people would call your good cholesterol, right, was 74. My triglycerides, 60. All good there, right? Doctors are like, good job. Until then you get to total cholesterol was the highest mine has ever been, 331 this time.
Yep.
Mine's not normally over 300, but it was. And LDL 240, which puts me pretty close, body type and everything, to the lean mass hyperresponder type profile, which I know is still very much being researched. But even with those numbers, if you see like, wow, lots of good HDL and low triglycerides, you've looked at my particle size test. My LDL is the nice fluffy type A. Yep. We've now seen my CAC scan, which was a 0. Now you've looked at the ultrasound. It's like, okay, so you have high cholesterol. Okay. Does that concern you?
It's not that we're ignoring things. It's that we're keeping a close eye on them. And, we are acknowledging the fact that, cholesterol quantity may not be the right answer. LDL quantity may not be the right thing to focus on. So again, as we kind of wrap up, the message is find a good practitioner who understands this. Keep an eye on things. I don't want people ignoring the problem. The CAC scan is a great test, easy to get. You can repeat it periodically, and you can keep a close eye on things. And if you start to see some plaque developing, okay, Now we need to, do some more investigation, reevaluate. And again, the answer is still not the red meat.
When we talk about fixing insulin resistance and just overall health, I typically just recommend 5 main things to cut out all of the processed food, sugary, starch, like carby stuff, to switch over to eating meat would be my preference, right? Meat. And then the other 3 things, movement, whether that's walking, resistance training, just move your body, deal with stress, and get sleep. Anything other than those 5, would you consider those foundational to heart health and just health in general?
Yeah, that's exactly how I look at the issue as well. And, give the same advice. And, at this point, we're seeing lots and lots of people having success with it. I think the more that we can be gathering this evidence and people can be monitoring these things, the more confidence we're going to get in this approach. Although, quite frankly, I am quite confident in recommending this approach at this point. And like I said, we're continuing to keep a close eye on these things with the people that I work with.
But have you ever had a reason to say to somebody, hey, listen, man, I'm going to need you to cut out meat?
I'm still yet to find that case.
Yeah, okay, great. And as a heart surgeon, you're still practicing all day, every day, right? In fact, we got to keep this short because you got to get back to work. But all day, every day, Dr. Ovadia is working with patients, and his recommendation, never go vegan, right? Like, that's not your solution to heart disease. And I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll keep fighting the good fight here. For you, Kelly, you're in great shape and you're doing well, and no reason to suggest a change in course at this point.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Ovadia, and for helping to get those tests done. I'm very grateful. So
always a pleasure, Kelly.
talk to you again soon.
All right. Bye.